Welcome to Narrative Strokes. Today we are listening to I'm a truck driver and I always end up at this gas station. The highway stretched out ahead of me, a long, winding path bathed in the dull glow of my truck's headlights. The road was empty, save for the occasional flicker of a distant light from another vehicle. The world outside felt vast, as if it were swallowed by the night itself. The hum of my engine was the only constant, a steady rhythm that kept me company as I drove through the quiet hours, hauling my freight across the state, just like I always did. There's something about long-haul trucking that pulls you into a rhythm. You get used to the solitude, the endless stretches of road that blur together into one indistinct memory. The occasional rest stop, the sleepy little towns you pass through, and the rare convenience store that sells trucker snacks and overpriced coffee. It's all part of the routine. You stop when you need fuel, stretch your legs, grab a snack, and keep moving. But there's one stop I always make, every time, without fail. It's a gas station. Not just any gas station. This one is different. It sits there on the side of a lonely stretch of highway, hidden in plain sight. It's not part of my usual route, but every time I approach this area, I feel something draw me to it. No matter how many times I've told myself to skip it, I always find myself pulling off the road, rolling up to the pumps as if some unseen force is guiding me. I've been driving for years, and I've stopped at hundreds of gas stations across the country. But this one feels different. It's as if the station itself is calling to me, pulling me in with a strange, magnetic force that I can't explain. The first time I stopped, I had no idea what I was getting myself into. I'd been hauling a load of lumber across the state, my truck low on fuel and my stomach starting to growl. I was pushing it, but I figured I could make it to the next town. That's when I saw it, the gas station. Barely a mile off the highway, its flickering neon sign barely visible in the distance. I should have kept going. I knew I should have. But for some reason, I turned into the lot. The place looked old. Really old. The kind of place that looked like it hadn't seen a coat of paint in years. The gas pumps were worn, their colors faded, and the building itself looked like it had been abandoned and then resurrected. Somehow still standing after years of neglect. It had that air of neglect about it, like someone had forgotten it was there. But I was low on fuel, and there weren't any other stations for miles. I pulled in and stepped out of the truck. The air smelled strange, a mix of stale gasoline and something else, something I couldn't quite place. The lot was deserted, empty, save for a few stray weeds growing up through the cracks in the concrete. I walked up to the door, and it creaked open with a low, eerie groan. Inside, the place was dimly lit, the lights flickering like the sign outside. There was no one around, no clerk, no other customers, just me and the dim glow of the fluorescent lights. That's when I saw him, Rick, the man behind the counter. He was old, probably in his 60s, with a scruffy white beard and thick glasses. He didn't look up when I walked in, just continued flipping through an old magazine as if I wasn't even there. I cleared my throat. "Hey there, just need to fill up." He didn't respond at first. Then, without looking up, he nodded slowly, his voice gruff when he spoke. "Pumps are over there." I nodded, trying not to feel too unsettled. I wasn't sure why, but there was something about the way he spoke, the way he never looked up, that made me uncomfortable. But I was low on fuel and the truck was already halfway out of gas, so I walked over to the pumps. Filling up was a silent affair. I didn't say anything more to Rick, and he didn't make a move to engage me either. When the pump clicked off, I walked inside to pay, but Rick was still sitting behind the counter, unmoving. He glanced up briefly as I approached, but his expression was blank, distant. "Anything else?" he asked, his voice almost a whisper. "No, just the gas," I said, handing over the cash. Rick took it without a word, and the exchange was done. I grabbed my receipt and left the station, but as I drove off, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. It wasn't the station itself, it was the man behind the counter. There was something in his eyes, or maybe it was the way he spoke that unsettled me. But I had a load to deliver, and I didn't think much about it. I chalked it up to exhaustion. Maybe I was just tired from the long drive. That was a year ago, and since that night, I've been back to that gas station more times than I care to count. Every time I pass by, something pulls me in. I can't explain it, but no matter how many times I tell myself to keep going, I end up turning into that worn-out parking lot. I've tried to skip it, tried to take a different exit, drive straight through without slowing down, but it never works. There's something about that place, something that calls to me in a way I can't ignore. I've started to notice things, little things mostly. The way the lights always flicker when I pull in, as if they're warning me to turn back. The way the air smells, faintly stale, like it hasn't been freshened in years. The way Rick never seems to age, despite the fact that I've been stopping there for months now. He looks the same every time, like he's stuck in time, as if he hasn't moved from that counter in years. I've tried to make small talk with him a few times, but he never responds the way I expect him to. One time, I asked him how long he'd been working there. He looked up from his magazine, his eyes cold and distant, and simply said, "Longer than you've been driving." The answer sent a shiver down my spine, but I didn't push it. I just filled up, paid, and left. But something happened last time I stopped. I had just finished filling up my tank and was walking back to my truck when I saw something strange. In the reflection of the glass door, I could see Rick standing in the window, watching me. But his face, it wasn't the same. His expression had changed. His eyes were wide, almost too wide, like he was trying to tell me something without speaking. I spun around, but he wasn't at the window anymore. The store was dark, the lights flickering in the same eerie pattern. I stood there for a moment, trying to shake off the feeling that I had just missed something important. That's when I heard it, a voice, low and barely audible, coming from the direction of the counter. "You'll be back." I froze. It wasn't Rick's voice. It was a different voice, deeper, more resonant. It felt like it was coming from the walls themselves. I looked around, but there was no one else in the station, just me and the dark, empty aisles. I left, fast, but the thought of those words haunted me all the way back to the highway. "You'll be back." And I knew, deep down, that I would. The next time I pulled into the gas station, I wasn't surprised to see the same flickering sign and the same empty lot. Rick was there, of course, sitting behind the counter as always. But something was different this time. I could feel it in the air. The tension, the weight of something about to happen. I stepped inside, but Rick didn't look up. His hands were frozen on the counter, not moving. His eyes were fixed on the empty space in front of him, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was no longer just a visitor here. I stood there, waiting for him to acknowledge me, but he didn't. Instead, I heard the voice again. This time, it wasn't just a whisper. It was a chorus, low and rumbling, as if it were coming from every corner in the room. "You will be back," it said. I didn't say anything. I just turned and walked out. But I knew that I would. Every time I passed this place, I couldn't stop myself. Something kept pulling me back. Something in that gas station, in Rick's cold, distant gaze, and in those words that followed me like a shadow. I couldn't tell you why I kept coming back. Maybe it was because I had to. Maybe it was because the road kept calling, and the station was a part of it now. Or maybe it was because I was starting to believe that there was something more to this place than just an old gas station on the side of the highway. Something I had to uncover, something I couldn't avoid. And so, I would keep driving, and I would keep stopping, no matter what. The sun was setting on my latest haul as I cruised down the same stretch of highway, that familiar, nagging feeling tugging at the back of my mind. I had a load of freight behind me, but the destination wasn't clear anymore. The hours on the road had blurred, and the rhythm of the drive had become a trance. The only thing that felt real was the pull toward the gas station. It was like a constant thread weaving itself into the fabric of my life, and no matter how many times I told myself to just keep driving, I always ended up here, at this strange forgotten stop on the side of the road. The flickering neon sign still bathed the lot in its weak, unreliable glow as I approached. Something inside me was screaming to keep going, to skip it for once, but I couldn't. I pulled off the highway, my tires crunching on the gravel of the lot as I parked by the pumps. The silence of the night swallowed me whole, the air thick with an unspoken promise. I didn't even look at the gas price. I wasn't here for the fuel anymore. I stepped out of the truck, the night cold and damp against my skin, and I made my way to the door. As always, it creaked open with that unsettling groan, as if the building itself were waking up from a deep, eternal slumber. Inside, the dim light flickered overhead, casting long shadows across the aisles. There was no one at the counter, just the stillness and the faint hum of the refrigerator. I took a few steps deeper into the store, my boots echoing on the linoleum. The shelves were stocked with snacks that had clearly seen better days, crinkled bags of chips, outdated energy drinks, and dusty bottles of soda. But nothing caught my eye. Nothing was ever meant to. Then I heard it, a soft shuffle behind the counter. I turned, my heart skipping a beat, but there was no one there. The space behind the counter was empty, the cash register as silent as it had always been. I almost turned around, almost left, but then I saw him, Rick. He wasn't standing at the counter like he normally did, but he was in the back of the store, his form half hidden by the rows of dusty canned goods. He was staring at something, though I couldn't see what. "Rick?" I called out, the sound of my own voice unfamiliar in the stillness. He didn't respond, his head tilted slightly to the side, his eyes wide and unblinking, as if he hadn't heard me. And then, as I took a step closer, something shifted in the air. The room felt colder, and the lights overhead buzzed with an intensity that made my skin crawl. I could feel it now, the weight of something pressing down on me. Something had changed in this place, and I was about to find out what. I walked toward Rick, slowly, cautiously. I didn't want to speak, didn't want to disturb the fragile tension that had built between us. But when I reached the end of the aisle and stood beside him, he still didn't acknowledge me. His gaze was fixed on whatever was in front of him, his hands frozen at his sides. And then I saw it. The wall in front of him was different from the rest of the room. Where the other walls were cracked and faded, this one was smooth, almost new. There was something etched into it, something I hadn't noticed before. A door, hidden in plain sight. It wasn't a door in the traditional sense, not with a knob or a frame. It was a seamless part of the wall, only discernible by the faint, shimmering outline that ran along the edges. I didn't know how I missed it before. It felt like it had always been there, yet somehow it hadn't. Like the building itself was shifting, like the space I was in was more than what it appeared. "What is that?" I asked, my voice quiet but filled with the urgency that had been building in my chest. Rick didn't answer. Instead, his lips barely moved as he muttered something under his breath, a soft, inaudible sound. It was almost like he was speaking to himself, but the words seemed to echo in the room, reverberating in the space around us. "You are here," he said, his voice low and strained, "just like the others." My heart skipped a beat. I stepped closer, unable to tear my gaze away from the wall. "The others?" I asked, my voice barely more than a whisper. Rick turned his head slowly, and for the first time he met my eyes. His gaze was empty, hollow, as if he were staring at something beyond me, something I couldn't see. His face was pale, the years of age etched into his features, but his eyes, they held something ancient, something that transcended time. "You've been coming for a long time," Rick said. "But you're not supposed to be here. None of you are." I didn't understand. My mind raced, but I couldn't make sense of what he was saying. "I've just been filling up," I said, my voice cracking as I tried to process the words. I don't understand." He blinked slowly, his eyes dimming, as if the weight of something unbearable was pressing down on him. "This place," he murmured, "this station, it's not just a stop. It's a crossroads, a place where time and people get lost." I took a step back, feeling the air grow thick, the weight of his words sinking in like stones in my stomach. Rick's lips quivered as he continued. "You've been here before. You're part of it too." "Part of what?" I asked, my voice barely a breath. "You're not driving a truck," he said. His voice had dropped to a whisper, and for the first time, I thought I saw something akin to pity in his gaze. "You're a passenger in time, just like the others." I shook my head, my chest tightening. "What are you talking about? I'm just a truck driver." "No," he said, the word coming out like a sharp gasp. "You don't remember, but you're not real anymore. None of us are. This place, it's where we all end up, stuck forever." I stumbled back, unable to comprehend the gravity of his words. My hands trembled, and my heart hammered in my chest. The station, the endless cycle of stops, the constant return. There was something deeper here, something I couldn't explain. "You're dead," Rick said softly, his voice almost sorrowful. "We all are." I felt the world shift beneath my feet, the floor beneath me giving way. It wasn't just the gas station, it was everything. The road, the truck, my entire life. It was all part of the same illusion, the same trap. The more I drove, the more I returned to this place, the more I was caught in the web. And that was the secret of the station. It wasn't a gas station at all. It was a limbo, a place for those who had lost their way, who had been taken in by the road and couldn't escape. We weren't real anymore. We were just echoes, repeating the same journey over and over, forever. I wanted to run, to leave, but I knew it was futile. I had already crossed the point of no return. "Why?" I asked, my voice cracking as I turned to look at the shimmering door. Rick's eyes softened. "Because you've always come back. You always will." I took a step forward, drawn to the door, the answer finally sinking in. It wasn't a question of choice. I wasn't in control anymore. I was just another traveler, stuck in this endless loop, unable to break free. And as I walked toward that door, I knew one thing for certain. This time, I wouldn't be leaving. Not again. Thank you for listening to today's story. If you enjoyed it, then comment down below and let me know what you think. I'll see you next time with another story. Until then, keep smiling and don't forget to like and subscribe.